researchers in general are a curious group. They just naturally want to know more and learn more. So allow your curiosity to kind of take you where you want to go and learn about some of these new things and enjoy it. Enjoy the journey.
All right, folks, we are back, and today we are talking to Jay Gangi. Jay is a market researcher, founder of NovaQuant, and lately has been diving fully into the world of AI and market research. Jay, welcome to the show.
Great. Thanks for having me, and congratulations on kicking off this podcast and having some great guests so far. So you've set a high bar. There's been a lot of great market researchers talking, and really continue to learn a lot from all these different folks that you've had on. So
I'm so glad. Yeah, that is the goal. And yeah, we have had some great folks on, including yourself. So let's get to know you a little bit, Jay. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in market research and what you've been up to at NovaQuant?
yeah, sure. I'm a career market researcher. I've been in the trenches doing this for a very long time. I started off with a traditional market research firm. I worked on the client side for Levi's and Clorox. I started my own company almost 20 years ago called NovaQuant, which focused on quantitative research. There isn't any type of research that I haven't done under the sun. Pretty much all types of different quantitative methodologies, segmentation, conjoint, packaging tests, brand tracking, all that good stuff. And I've done a fair amount of qualitative research as well. So I like to think I bring a 360 kind of view to the research world and kind of look at it from a lot of different perspectives. But it's something I've really enjoyed doing. It's been a great career, and I'm now in the process of just learning a lot more about what we can do with AI. It's been pretty fascinating, actually, what's out there.
Yeah, and before we jump into kind of the nitty gritty of the AI stuff, like how have you seen the field kind of change over the years? If you kind of could just give us the broad strokes, like it'll kind of help set the context of like, hey, here's where we were, say, 20 years ago when you started, and what kind of steps did we have to take to get here, where it seems like we're at the beginning of this next wave of innovation in AI. But can you kind of like couch that for us historically, just to kind of set the context here?
Yeah, so absolutely. When I started my market research career, we were still doing research door to door in malls, on the telephone, that type of thing. And one of the things that really kind of jolted the industry into place was the advent of starting to do research online 20 or something years ago, 25, 26 years ago. Initially, it wasn't that well accepted doing market research online because the idea that there weren't the online population really wasn't representative of the U.S. population. But as more and more people came online and methodologies evolved and people started doing data weighting and some things like that, it really started to take off about 20, 25 years ago. But to be honest, there hasn't been a lot of, in my mind, there hasn't been a lot of innovation in the market research world since we started doing research online. During the pandemic, we saw a lot of qualitative get shifted online as well because it was a pandemic, right? People couldn't travel, so that's been a little bit of an evolutionary move for the qualitative side of the business as well. So there's been some things that have evolved, but really, I see this AI as being something that can be actually revolutionary. The way it's just kind of hitting, and there's just so many different tools that you can use to apply to your processes and to make you more efficient. It's been pretty amazing from what I've been seeing.
Yeah, so let's get into it. You've been fully diving into the world of AI. Start us off with your big picture views about the space. I know it's moving incredibly fast, and even as someone who's kind of on the inside, building on these language models, it's moving fast for us, right? And so if you're in the market research space, there's a ton of noise. It seems like there's new tools coming out all the time. A lot of promises. Maybe not all of them are going to be fulfilled.
Right.
So yeah, start us off big picture. Kind of, what are you seeing? What's your kind of broad take on AI in the market research space?
Yeah, I think my broad take is there's just a lot of tools. There is a lot of noise. There's a lot of stuff going on out there, and it's hard to know, what's actually going to work and what's not going to work. So I think a lot of us are still in a very much an exploratory phase, kind of trying to figure that out. Certainly, I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there with how people are currently using ChatGPT in the market research industry. And that is like just, using ChatGPT to get smarter about a category or a target audience. summarizing some data that you have, including secondary information or qualitative information you might have. And also, I think a lot of my colleagues are using ChatGPT as a brainstorming tool to really kind of think about what are some of the questions I should be asking, either in my quantitative survey or my qualitative survey. So that's some of the low-hanging fruit that's going on right now, and I think it's being put. It's people are putting that to the task. Um, but I think there's some other bigger, broader things that are going on out there in the world of analytics. I know people have also talked about the use of synthetic data. We could talk about that a little bit more later. But what I'm really excited about is the possibility with what I'm seeing in AI and what I've been working on, not exclusively, but a lot these days, is the opportunity to use chatbots either as in a survey or as a way to replace open-ended responses. And it sounds a little scary, having chatbots in a survey, but it's an opportunity, I think, for people to embrace this technology and be more engaging with respondents, right? And step away from the classic traditional questionnaire. Um, and I think there's obviously some concerns about that, but I think we just have to take it slow and measure it and test it and just see what works.
Yeah, to your point about you know being kind of cautiously optimistic about leveraging this new tech, maybe going slow. There is a huge opportunity, that I see to improve the participant experience, as you're saying. Uh, just because, to the point you made earlier, a lot of things actually haven't changed in the last,
Hmm.
call it decade or so. Survey
Right.
open ends are still survey open ends, right? We've gotten a
Mhm.
little bit better at, analyzing that data on the back end. Probably a little bit better at crafting the questions, but they're still essentially the same as they were 20 years ago. I mean, maybe the biggest leap has been if you took a survey you used to write down your answer on paper, and now you write it down on a laptop.
Mhm.
Um, but from a participant experience perspective, I think that's actually a huge kind of opportunity for research firms for sure to engage participants in kind of a more personalized and dynamic way. Um, so, what are some of the factors, and participant experience could be one of them, do you think that are driving the adoption of AI in market research? Because I kind of see it. It's happening in two directions. One is there's companies that are building on these AI models, and they see an opportunity to say, "Hey, we can help this industry maybe do things better, faster, cheaper, and add a new technology layer to kind of their existing processes." On the other side, there's demand from within research firms and research consultants who are saying, we need better tools to improve participant experience, improve data quality, reduce our costs, things like this. So, obviously there's kind of there's multiple driving forces in the market. So
Mhm.
what are the factors that you see that are really driving people to explore and adopt these tools in the research space?
Well, I think you're right. I think market researchers will always tell you that the data quality is something that's critical to them, and I think we have been on a mission. I think to try to figure out ways of getting better quality data from our respondents, because there is a group of people out there, professional respondents taking surveys, and we go to great pains to try to weed them out. But I think there is an opportunity to kind of improve the data quality through more engaging um, types of data collection methodologies that would include chat. And I think it's only going to get better over time. And I think we're just going to become more facile with it, more comfortable with it. But again, it's not necessarily a perfect replacement for surveys just yet. I think there's some opportunities. I think in the short term to do what you say, like at the very least, we can be enhancing open-ended responses within quantitative surveys and using chat technology to do that. And potentially, down the road, we could see it as a replacement for traditional surveys, because certainly, what this chatbot technology has allowed us to do in market research is to do um, qualitative at scale, essentially. So, you could do 100 of these type interviews, like 10-minute chats, or you could do thousands of them. But the beauty of it is that at the back end, you've got this unstructured data. which gives you qualitative insights into these respondents. But the AI on the back end will also then allow you to structure that data so you can actually tabulate the information much as you would with scaled questions back in the day. And again, I think there's a lot of people will tell you out there, whenever you write a structured question, there's going to be a bias to it, whether it's the scale you use or how you phrase it. Whereas if you're asking open-ended questions, there still might be some bias in the way you ask it and the way you probe it, but you're letting the respondent speak. You're letting them give you what's top of mind to them, and you're not just asking them to respond to something you're putting in front of them. So, yeah, so I think there's a real lot of opportunity to do things with the chat technology and on the back end with the AI analysis.
If we could just stay on the qualitative component for a second, when you think about the value of qualitative data and how you communicate that value to, say, an end client, right? So, say you're working with a brand, uh, and you're kind of pitching them on, hey, we want to do this qualitative component. How do you communicate the sort of differentiated value of that qual component to that end client? Because I know that, from seeing it up close and personal, they're getting a lot of like the real customer voice in there. They're getting a lot of insights they might not get otherwise. But I'm just curious, as a researcher yourself who has to kind of sell the end client on this, how do you communicate the the elevated value of qual?
Yeah, so as someone who's focused pretty heavily on quantitative research over the years, I've also really put a lot of emphasis on the follow-up questions that we ask in our quantitative surveys. So if a concept test, we ask a bunch of scaled questions about likability and uniqueness and value and that type of thing. But then we also like to follow up with open-ended responses like, well, why did you feel that way? And what made you think this about this particular product or service? So we were always trying to get at kind of like, here are the key metrics, in terms of, 72%, found this appealing, 42% found this unique, that type of thing. But the open ends have always allowed you to kind of understand the whys. But again, in the construct of a traditional survey, you're kind of limited because you're just getting to say, okay, and why did you say that, and so forth. So you can construct the best open-ended question in the world, but people are only going to play back so much, and particularly if it's in a category where they're not particularly interested or connected to. But with the advent of AI as a tool to ask or probe on open-ended questions, allows you to go deeper and really kind of really at a much deeper level understand the whys, what people are saying, what they're saying, or rating a particular product or service a certain way. So it's really it's always been there, open ends, as a way to understand the whys, but now I think you can do even more with it because you have this ability to probe. You have this automated tool that's going to allow you to probe within a survey, almost as if you were there yourself, right, as a researcher, to say, okay, well, tell me more about it. So yeah, so it's just I just think this is a fantastic way to kind of blend the quantitative and the qualitative, and it's happening. It's happening fast. It's coming.
So, what I'm hearing, and we actually heard this on a previous episode that we did, is that this is sort of a net new possibility that's unlocked with the advent of AI. So, before you had your static survey open end, and you'd ask the question, and you'd get what you get out of the response, right? There wasn't an opportunity to probe and follow up. So, this is something that's net new to the space. Is there anything else that you see, AI kind of unlocking for market research in a similar vein where, we couldn't do it before and now we can? Or do you think a lot of the value add is going to come from, we could do this before, but now we can just do it better or at a larger
Mhm.
scale or faster or something like that?
Well, I think it's an interesting question, and I wish I was a great futurist and could tell you where this could all ultimately lead. Well, I will say though, is I do think it has the ability to kind of speed up processes and improve processes and make us smarter researchers, make us more efficient, allow us to do our analyses quicker and that type of thing. I don't see AI replacing the market researcher anytime soon. I still think there's a pretty big role that we will need to play as part of that, maybe even more so these days, because you'll want to have a market researcher who can be the gatekeeper, right? Who can make sure that you're using the right methodologies, who's kind of tested and feels comfortable that we're getting data the right way and we're analyzing it the right way as well. So I still think there's going to be a pretty huge role for the market researcher in this. But I do think, as we use these tools and become more comfortable with them, and we streamline these processes, I think it'll allow market researchers to be more creative with how they might ultimately use AI, right? And there'll be other developments down the road. So I think initially, I do think you're going to see some cost and efficiency benefits to it, and hopefully some data quality benefits too. We mentioned already, if you've got more engaging surveys, what does that mean for the inputs? It means you're having better quality inputs, right? And certainly on the back end, there's so many different ways now that people can analyze the data, this unstructured data, and do so many different things with it. So I really think that there's just a lot of tremendous possibilities, and I don't really know how to predict what those will be, but I think in the short term, we're going to see some things that are really going to help the market researcher in his day-to-day activities, whether it's a client-side researcher or an agency researcher or a freelancer. That's going to allow them to be really more impactful and more strategic in how they deliver results and how they make their recommendations to clients and internal stakeholders. And yeah, I think we'll just have to see how it plays out, what else is out there. I know there's some discussion about replacing respondents with synthetic data and using that as a potential tool to kind of solve some of our data input needs. Right now, I'm not convinced that that's an effective approach. My hats off to the people who are still trying to build those models out. I think it's very interesting, and I'm not willing to be too critical of it because I'd like to see where it goes. But at this point, what I'm hearing about synthetic data and using large language models to create artificial respondents, I feel like it's something that has some merit for hypothesis generating and brainstorming. I'm not yet ready to say, oh, this is something that can really help you drive a decision in the marketplace. I'm not ready to step away from real respondents to kind of help guide that process. But hats off to those people who are working on it. There's a lot of smart people trying to do it. And so I'm encouraging to them, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they develop in that realm of synthetic data, synthetic respondents.
If there's anything we've learned in the AI space over the last couple of years, it's that no one can predict the future, and ideas that may seem a bit silly or undercooked initially, some of them are going to forever be just that, kind of silly and don't go anywhere. Others are going to turn into the next big thing. And, I don't think anyone's in a position to say this is exactly how it's all going to play out. So I think that's a very kind of wise answer based on our experience of just how fast things can move in this space. So, you've had hands-on experience, using AI in your market research. Talk to us a little bit about, where that's going well, where you see room for improvement, what kind of results it's been able to deliver, because we are still so early in kind of the researcher adoption of AI that there's not a ton of real concrete case studies out there. And so you're someone who's actually, kind of been in the trenches with these tools, seeing where they work, seeing where they still need to evolve. So, take us through that. What's that been like, and what kind of results has it been able to deliver for your clients?
Sure. Well, I can take you through a couple of different case studies that we've worked on together. So, with regard to helping a research vendor do more with their open ends, we were able to do an A/B test where we actually used the chat bot instead of the traditional open ends, and we compared the two, and we could see that there was much more in-depth response when we used the chatbot, and that allowed this particular vendor to do even more with their text analytics tools because they just had better quality data and more quality and more data than they would have had from doing the traditional open ends in their surveys. So I think that's one instance of something that we've seen and we've proven, and I think other research companies would be wise to start kind of building that into their portfolio, into their offering. Another study that I did on behalf of one of my clients using the Reveal technology was a kind of small, medium-sized study where we talked to 100 of their customers, and we got feedback to a new concept that they were considering, and it also gave us the unstructured data, which then we looked at for qualitative insights, which allowed us to improve that concept. But it also gave us kind of the green light to say, you know what, this concept was pretty good. We spoke to 100 people, 70% found it appealing, it was unique, all these things. And that allowed them to know that, hey, this is something that's worth further investigation. It wasn't a full concept test. But it allowed them to say, okay, now we can make some refinements to this particular concept and optimize it, and then go into a more complete quantitative concept test. So it was kind of one of those things, was in between doing like some initial focus groups and doing a full quantitative test. So I think there's opportunity to kind of use AI for this type of research too, something that's kind of qualitative and quantitative. You don't have to break the bank and talk to thousands of people. You can just get some initial input from a particular target audience, and you'll get both qualitative and quantitative insight that'll move things forward. Okay, it might not be as decisive as doing a full concept test where you want to truly validate things with a larger number of people, but I definitely see there's a lot of opportunity to do these kind of quasi qual and quant studies as well. So
You know,
uh,
that's actually something we've heard from a handful of our customers who uh, their emerging use case, which we had to learn from them, was, hey, we actually want to take these AI tools and kind of use it as an initial. Actually, one person called it. It's like the SEAL Team 6, where it's like you go in, advanced team, do like a small, fast qual study to kind of flesh out those initial concepts, see if there's more kind of worth investigating there, and then use that to inform the subsequent larger quantitative study. So, do you see that as kind of an emerging use case where when researchers have access to these kind of lighter weight, faster tools, they're able to go in, ask, 5 to 8 kind of targeted, open ended questions, get all of that unstructured data, and then quickly kind of work through that to say, okay, we're either going to greenlight this for further research, or actually, we've seen all we need to see. We can focus our resources elsewhere. So, yeah, how do you kind of think about that opportunity with these
yeah, I
tools?
definitely think it's something that organizations should be thinking about as incorporating into their innovation pipeline. It's kind of a way of getting kind of that early stage check on something, right? And that's not to say it'll necessarily replace more in-depth interviews or focus groups, which I think still will have a role because it allows you to go deeper on certain things. And I think there's something to be said too about speaking to real people in real time and seeing how they react to things and so forth. But yeah, so I don't necessarily see it as a replacement of some of the more foundational qualitative work that you might do. But again, I see it as a great way of kind of bridging that gap from some foundational qualitative research you might do before you do these broader quantitative studies. And the more that organizations like Reveal and others who are offering this type of technology can make that do it yourself, then more power to you, because that's it just makes it quicker and faster for the user, right? And we don't have to, you can just do it on your own, right? But again, it still takes some expertise. You still have to figure out who you're going to speak to, get the appropriate target audience, and so forth. So, but yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah. So, up to this point, I've kind of been asking your views on the world of market research and AI, and how those are kind of evolving together. But you also did some work to understand how other market researchers are viewing AI and leveraging AI in their own work. And so that's actually a really interesting discussion for us, which is, what are you seeing sort of in the world of market researchers generally in terms of attitudes towards this new technology,
Mhm.
the way that other people are maybe leveraging it for these initial kind of use cases. So, what were kind of the findings of that study? Take us through that.
Yeah, sure. So it was a small scale study. I think we spoke to 44 people in the market research world. But we spoke to people who had been in research for a long time, for the most part, 15 years. They were all like fairly senior level people, decision makers, definitely thought leaders in the category, and a nice mix of qualitative and quantitative people as well. So our findings were that, for the most part, people are generally excited about the potential that AI could bring to the table. There were some concerns. People just mentioned well, where's the data coming from? How are we going to use the data? Is the data going to be misrepresented and that type of thing? But what was interesting is that you didn't hear a lot of people saying, "Oh my goodness, this is going to replace me in my job." In fact, most of the people we talked to, and subsequent conversations I've had with other researchers, they really see AI as a potential tool to help them, to guide them. And that could be, again, as we said, something as easy as creating some notes or learning about the category before you create a discussion guide, through using chat, through using AI for analysis on the back end. So yeah, so people were, there was some skepticism, but for the most part, I think people were kind of like, hey, I got to learn some more about this. This is exciting. There's some things we can do with it, and it'll definitely bring some speed and efficiency to what we do. Now, again, I don't think people had a lot of examples of of ways that this was going to happen, because I think they're still kind of exploring it themselves and kind of seeing what's out there. So that was all kind of part of it. Um, yeah, but generally very, very optimistic and a positive attitude towards it. And to be quite honest, most market researchers are very, very conservative and not really willing to kind of change. But it did feel like people understood that there was change afoot, and they needed to start understanding that and adopting to it as well, if it made sense for their particular businesses. So.
That's why I think, having this kind of conversation with you is so important because from what I can tell, every time I talk to customers in the market research space, they're looking left, they're looking right, and they're saying, okay, this AI thing is here. How do we make sense of it, right? How do we
Mhm.
know there's an opportunity here, but as they're looking around, they're seeing a lot of tools, not a lot of case studies just yet because we are still quite early. And
Mhm.
so having this conversation with you is great because you've actually kind of been both in the trenches using the tools, but also talking to dozens and dozens of your colleagues to really get a pulse check on like, where people are at in terms of, interest, adoption, things like
Mhm.
that. So hopefully this is beneficial to everyone who's trying to make sense and kind of nail down their AI strategy because they know they need one, but they're maybe not sure exactly what it's supposed to be just yet. And I feel like a lot of research firms that we talk to are very much in that boat.
Mhm.
Um, but in terms of what we're seeing, the interest is there. I mean that is for sure, and it's really just a matter of navigating, some successful pilot programs, being able to demonstrate value, and being able to show, yeah, why this is actually different and a net kind of value add for their firm. So I think that's a process, but hopefully, our chat here is just one more kind of step on that path to people, wrapping their heads around kind of the opportunity here.
Yeah, it definitely is a process, and it's a lot of work. I've been doing one or two demos, or maybe even more each week, and just trying to get my head around all the different things that are out there, and how they might help me and how they might help other people. But I just think we have to do that due diligence. We have to keep an open mind to what will work and what doesn't work. To the degree possible, as researchers, that we can experiment with these things and explore and do A/B tests and pilot tests. I think that goes a long way to proving the value. Because they're definitely, people are going to talk about speed and costs and everything, but I think at the end of the day, we still have to kind of be the guardians of that data quality, and we also have to be vengeful about privacy concerns and security issues as well. So that certainly isn't going away. That's also a big part of the picture. So again, all important things that we can do as market researchers to kind of help bring these tools to bear and utilize them for our purposes and for the organizations that we work for.
That leads in really well to uh, an idea here about the evolving role of the market researcher, right? So you've shared some ideas on this so far, but kind of how do you think about how that role is going to evolve, and how it continues to evolve as AI tools are maybe starting to pick some of this low hanging fruit, whether it's hey, survey open-ends are now dynamic, so you're actually able to have a whole chat just with an AI driven interview there.
Mhm.
Maybe a lot of the analysis on the back end is going to get a lot faster. So, how do you think of the researcher operating in that sort of paradigm, and how do they continue to partner with clients in a way that is still very value oriented, build a strong relationship, and still deliver differentiated value
Mhm.
to these end clients.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for researchers to be more strategic and more creative, and really be focused more on solving business issues and making strong recommendations that they're seeing, rather than worrying about the actual. Well, no, it's never going to go away. You've got projects to run. You've got questionnaires to write, whether they're chatbot questionnaires or regular questionnaires. I mean, there's still kind of be going to be nuts and bolts things that need to be managed and approved and so forth. But I do think these AI tools are going to make it easier for the research to get through a lot of that nuts and bolts stuff, and really rise to the level of being more of a strategic partner to their clients and internal stakeholders. And yeah, I just think that the more time you have to think about solving problems and delivering recommendations, and the less time you have to think about how you're actually going to get there, because you've got tools that can help you. I just think it's going to make researchers, give them potentially even more vision, make them more visible within their organizations as thought leaders if they have these tools at their disposal and can use them effectively.
And that's a big theme that I've heard from a lot of the folks I've talked to about how researchers are really trying to get a seat at the table, so to speak, and have those business level recommendations as opposed to saying, hey, here's the data, and then that's kind of the end of their involvement. And so I've heard a lot from different folks in the space about how researchers are now, they're almost like a part-time content creator, right? It's like you're not just conducting the
Mhm.
research and putting together a 50-page report that no one reads. You're creating assets, right? You're creating points of view on the business or the future trajectory of a particular industry. And I think your point is very well made about the more that we can pick some of that low hanging fruit and offload is not the right word, but augment with the help of technology some of those nuts and bolts. The researcher does kind of step into a more strategic, and ultimately it's like they're doing the things that humans can do best, right? To
Mhm.
partner, to offer those recommendations, to synthesize the findings. And so I think that is a very optimistic view, and I think that's where we all hope it goes. Some of the nuts and bolts just get a little bit easier, and then you spend more time kind of operating at the strategic human level. So as we're kind of getting ready to wrap here, like I'd love to know, what advice do you have to researchers who are evaluating the opportunity presented by AI in the research space? Because there's just so much out there. Like you said, you're doing 2 demos a week, and how are you supposed to make sense of all this? Like sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming, and there's a lot of information to parse through. So what advice do you have to them, and how can they kind of get started if they're trying to create kind of an AI strategy for their firm or for their research group in their company?
Mhm. Well, I like to say that, if you're really being smart about it, you create some sort of strategic roadmap for what it is you need, right? What it is you think you'll need to augment or to improve your market research function. But the truth is, you can do that, but I think it does pay to kind of be a little bit more just open-minded and kind of try out some new things, and demo something that you might think is very qualitative, even though you might be in the world that's very quantitative. So I just think that it's still a little bit of open season out there, and obviously you want to be somewhat selective with where you spend your time, and where you do your research on these things. But I do think the more you keep an open mind and kind of set yourself on a path of I'm going to demo one new research technology like every week or something like that, something along those lines, and also assign it to other people on your team too, and share your thoughts and share your notes, and kind of build that collectively, because somebody might see something in a tool maybe that you didn't see, right? And it might be something that can be very effective for your organization if you bring it in. So yeah, I wish I could say you should just, if you're a qualitative person, you should just focus on these qualitative things, but and quantitative and vice versa. But I just think there's so much overlap, and I see that these tools being used for multiple things sometimes, that I would try to keep an open mind to it, and just be diligent, ask good questions. Um, I know also there's been some things published by SMR and others that will tell you here's some of the things you should be looking for. when you know, kind of a checklist, if you will, for research technologies. So, you know, I would consult some of that as well. But just yeah, have an open mind. Chat with your colleagues, chat with people that you don't always chat with very often. I've actually spent a lot of time in the past few weeks just reaching out to colleagues that I haven't talked to in a long time, just to catch up personally, but also kind of find out what they're thinking about and how they, you know, how they might be using AI and what their needs are. So you get a different perspective from people, and you know, but people on the client side, people on the supplier side all have kind of different perspectives on how these things should be used, and or how they might be used. Again, I think it's still very exploratory at this point. So a lot of people don't have definitive points of view on a lot of these tools and how they're using them. But it's an exciting time. So I would also say enjoy it. You know, one of the things we had a chat the other day with some researchers about something else, and one of the things we discussed was that, you know, researchers in general are a curious group. They just naturally want to know more and learn more. So allow your curiosity to kind of take you where you want to go, and learn about some of these new things, and enjoy it. Enjoy the journey.
That's awesome. That's very well said, Jay. So we're getting ready to wrap here, but you've shared so many great insights into not just the world of AI, but kind of the world of market research in general. So I'm sure people are wondering, you know, how can we kind of learn more about you, the work you're doing at NovaQuant, things like that. So can you just give us like an on ramp to learn more about Jay and all the work you're doing?
Yeah, sure. I think I've really found that LinkedIn has been a great tool for me for learning more about this and for connecting with others and networking with others. So I would encourage people to reach out to me on LinkedIn, DM me on LinkedIn. You can send me emails too, the old-fashioned way, j@novaquant.com, and we'll post that information up for you. But yeah, I found that LinkedIn has been a great way to kind of network with colleagues and learn about some of these tools and where we might do demos and that type of thing, and share information on them. So definitely, LinkedIn is kind of my avenue to this world right now. So
Cool. Yeah. Well, be sure to follow Jay on LinkedIn. You know, you are very much in the mix when it comes to these sort of new AI tools and how they're impacting the research space. So, Jay, thank you so much for being here today. It was awesome to talk to you. Loved all the insights on this just really quickly, you know, evolving and kind of rapidly changing space. So, thanks so much for being here, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
thanks, Zach. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and good luck with your future podcast. I'm sure it'll be great.